Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time, um, we are going to be tackling something that I think affects pretty much everyone, and that is fear. We're going to be using the book Path to Courage as our guide. It's got a lot of practical tips and techniques, kind of like a toolkit for building courage, you know? And I'm not sure if I mentioned this, but it does come with a no guarantees disclaimer.
Right.
But then again, what in life doesn't?
Well, that's a great point. And it speaks to the book's realistic approach.
Mhm.
You know, it acknowledges that fear is a part of life,
Yeah.
but it empowers you with strategies to navigate it rather than, promising to eliminate it completely.
Yeah. And that's exactly what we're going to do today. Think of this deep dive as like your own personal workshop on understanding and overcoming fear.
I like that analogy. Now, the book starts by emphasizing the importance, understanding fear itself.
Mm.
And it makes this interesting distinction between healthy and unhealthy fear.
Yeah, I was fascinated by that too. So let's break it down for our listener. What exactly is the difference? I remember the book uses the example of someone being afraid of getting lung cancer if they continue to smoke.
Right. That would be considered a healthy fear because it's rooted in a real danger and it motivates you to take positive action like quitting smoking. It's like your body's alarm system alerting you to potential harm.
Okay, so it's like a helpful nudge in the right direction. But then what would be an example of an unhealthy fear? What comes to mind for you?
Well, think about a common fear like being terrified of spiders. For most people, a spider in a house isn't a real life-threatening danger, but the fear can be completely paralyzing. It's not motivating any positive action. It's just causing distress and interfering with your life.
I see what you mean. So it's about recognizing whether the fear is serving a useful purpose or just holding us back.
Exactly. And the book has this incredibly powerful line that really resonated with me. Uncontrolled fear is like sand in the machinery of life.
Wow, that's a great visual. It really highlights how fear, when left unchecked, can grind everything to a halt. Have you ever experienced this in your own life? I know I have. There was a time I was absolutely terrified of public speaking.
Oh, yeah.
Like it was really, really bad.
Oh, I can relate to that.
Yeah.
I used to get so nervous before presentations, my hands would actually shake. But like the book suggests, I started by acknowledging the fear and then gradually exposed myself to speaking situations, starting with small groups.
That's a perfect example of how the book encourages us to move from understanding to action. It even suggests like writing down our fears, not just thinking about them. I
Right.
think this is where our listener can really jump in. Think about it. What are you most afraid of? And how is fear holding you back from living your fullest life? Take a moment to reflect on that.
That's such a powerful invitation and a great lead in to the book's next strategy, the 5% statement.
Okay, let's dive into that.
Right.
This is where the book gets super practical, right? It's not about making these huge sweeping changes that can feel really overwhelming. It's about taking small, manageable steps.
Absolutely. The 5% statement is all about asking yourself, if I were 5% more, you can fill in the blank, courageous, confident, outgoing, etc. Today, what would I do? It breaks down those big, scary goals into smaller, actionable steps.
I love how simple yet effective that idea is. For instance, if someone is terrified of social interaction, their 5% statement might be, if I were 5% more outgoing today, I would strike up a conversation with a stranger in line at the coffee shop. It doesn't have to be anything dramatic, just a small step outside their comfort zone.
And the book has this great example of a woman whose 5% statement involved buying lunch for a homeless person and actually talking to them. It was a small act of kindness, but it helped her overcome her fear of approaching and connecting with people.
That's a beautiful example. And what I find so exciting about the 5% principle is that it can be applied to almost any area of life, not just overcoming fear. Think about it, listener. How could you apply the 5% principle to other areas where you want to grow or improve? It's about making gradual progress one small step at a time.
And those small steps can lead to incredible transformations. Speaking of moving forward, the book also stresses the importance of directly confronting our fears.
It's like that saying, feel the fear and do it anyway. But how do we actually do that? It can be so daunting.
The book offers a really insightful analogy, comparing facing our fears to that classic childhood fear of a monster under the bed. You remember how scary that felt. But then you'd turn on the light, and the monster would turn out to be just a pile of clothes.
Oh, I totally get that. It's about exposing the fear to the light of day and realizing it might not be as terrifying as our imagination makes it out to be.
Exactly. It's about challenging those assumptions and seeing things for what they truly are. And the book suggests a really practical exercise for this, listing out the price we pay for staying stuck in fear. Think about it, listener. What are the long-term consequences of letting fear control you?
That's such a good point. Sometimes we need to see the cost of inaction to motivate ourselves to take that leap. But what about those fears that are so deep-seated they feel almost impossible to confront head-on?
That's where the power of affirmations comes in. The book describes them as uh, affirmative prayers, which I thought was such a beautiful way to put it. It's like using positive self-talk to rewire our thinking.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How exactly do affirmations work? Is it just about repeating positive phrases to ourselves over and over?
There's more to it than that. The book emphasizes the importance of using the present tense, even if you don't fully believe it yet. So instead of saying, I hope to be less afraid of public speaking, you would say, I am a confident and engaging speaker.
I see it's about speaking to yourself as if you've already achieved that desired state. But what if our inner critic is screaming, no way you're not fooling me? The book does acknowledge that our subconscious might resist these positive affirmations at first.
Absolutely, and that's where it offers some helpful workarounds. Instead of, I am confident, you could try saying, I choose to feel confident, or I am becoming more confident each day. It softens the resistance and allows for a more gradual shift in your thinking.
That makes so much sense. I love that flexibility. The book also shares a particularly potent affirmation. There is no fear, there is only God. Now, I know that might not resonate with everyone, but the idea is to connect with something larger than yourself, a source of strength and peace that transcends your individual fears.
Yes, it's about tapping into a sense of higher power, whatever that means for you. If that specific phrase doesn't resonate, you can always adapt it to something that feels more authentic to your beliefs.
It's about finding that anchor of courage and peace within ourselves. So we've talked about identifying our fears, taking small steps with the 5% statement, confronting fears head on, and shifting our thinking with affirmations. What other tools does the book offer for conquering fear?
Well, it delves into a topic that I know you're curious about, self-hypnosis.
Oh, yes, self-hypnosis. You know me too well. It always sounded a bit mysterious to me, but I've always been fascinated by the idea of using our minds to reprogram deep-seated fears.
It's really quite remarkable. And the book emphasizes that self-hypnosis is a gentle and safe technique. It's about guiding yourself into a relaxed state where you can access your subconscious mind and start to rewire those negative thought patterns that fuel fear.
So walk me through it. How does it actually work? I'm imagining a swinging pocket watch and someone saying, you are getting sleepy.
Well, it's a bit more nuanced than that, thankfully. The book outlines a three-step process. First, you relax your body and mind, perhaps through deep breathing or visualization techniques. Then you identify the root cause of the fear you want to address. What's the underlying belief or experience that's triggering this fear? And finally, you replace those fearful feelings with positive suggestions. It's like giving your subconscious mind a powerful software update.
I love that analogy. It makes it sound so much less intimidating. Do you have any examples of how to reframe those negative thoughts during self-hypnosis?
Absolutely. Instead of saying, I'm no longer afraid of public speaking,
Yeah.
you can say, I am a confident and engaging speaker. Or instead of dwelling on past failures, you could visualize yourself successfully navigating those situations with ease and grace.
It's amazing how changing our internal dialogue can shift our entire experience of a situation. The book also talks about this idea of rewriting our fears by imagining more positive scenarios.
Right. It's like taking control of the narrative in our own minds.
Mm.
Instead of picturing ourselves freezing up during a presentation, we can visualize ourselves delivering it with confidence and charisma, connecting with the audience, and receiving positive feedback.
It's about creating new mental blueprints for success. So we've explored all these powerful techniques for managing
Yeah.
fear, but I'm sensing that there's one more piece to this puzzle, something that ties it all together. It feels like we've been kind of building towards like a big idea.
You're right on the money. The book culminates with this really powerful message about the importance of embracing empowering thoughts.
Okay, so let's unpack that. I'm ready.
Well, think about it. Fear is often fueled by our own negative thoughts. Those what-if scenarios that kind of spin out of control in our minds. But the book reminds us that we have the power to choose our thoughts, you know?
Hmm.
By consciously cultivating empowering thoughts, we can literally change our emotional response to fear.
It's like we're taking back control of the steering wheel, navigating our minds towards courage instead of just getting stuck in that fear. So how do we actually put this into practice? What specific techniques does the book offer?
Well, it starts with becoming aware of our self-talk. What are those negative fear-based thoughts that keep popping up? Once we identify them, we can consciously choose to replace them with more positive, empowering affirmations. It's like weeding a garden, you know? pulling out those pesky weeds of fear and planting seeds of courage in their place.
That's such a great analogy. I can almost see those little sprouts of courage pushing through the soil. And I remember the book also mentioning this idea of focusing on the best possible outcome, even in challenging situations.
Yes. Instead of fixating on what we fear, we can shift our attention to what we desire. It's a subtle but really powerful shift in perspective that can transform our whole experience.
And remember that fun suggestion from the book. Turn it into a game. Challenge yourself to come up with the most outlandish positive outcome imaginable. I love that idea because it injects some lightness and humor into the process of dealing with fear.
It's about breaking free from those rigid fear-based thought patterns and allowing ourselves to play with possibilities. The core message here is that we have a choice. We can choose to let fear control us, or we can choose to cultivate courage.
That's such a powerful takeaway, and it really does encapsulate the essence of Path to Courage. It doesn't just tell us to be fearless, it gives us practical tools to actually become more courageous. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what stands out to you as the book's most powerful message?
For me, it's the emphasis on action. This book doesn't just offer philosophical musings on fear. It provides concrete strategies for understanding, managing, and ultimately overcoming it. It reminds us that we're not passive victims of our fears. We have the power to choose courage one step at a time.
I totally agree. It's so inspiring. And this leads me to a final thought for our listener. We've explored so many techniques from Path to Courage. Which one resonated with you the most? And more importantly, what small step can you take today to move towards a life with less fear and more courage?
That's the question we should all be asking ourselves. Whether it's writing down your fears, trying a 5% statement, crafting a powerful affirmation, or exploring self-hypnosis, there's something in this book for everyone. And remember, as Path to Courage so beautifully reminds us, you have the power within you to choose courage.
That's such a perfect note to end on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into conquering fear. Remember, you are braver than you think. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep choosing courage.